This is the IBJ Podcast for the week of June 19th, 2023, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. As Jim Carpenter tells it, he was an unemployed bird watcher in 1981 when he decided to open a feed store in Broad Ripple called Wild Birds Unlimited. Today, there are 365 franchise locations in the chain founded by Carpenter and his wife, Nancy. And the couple has a jaw-dropping new roost for watching birds. In 2021, they bought a former golf course in northern Zionsville so it could slip back into its natural state. The decision to buy the 215-acre Wolf Run Golf Club for $5.5 million was a bit of a gamble. The Carpenters were banking on Zionsville officials to buy the land from them, albeit at a discount from their purchase price, so it could be a town nature park. It took about 2 years, but the town council agreed last month to free up funds to pay $4.5 million for the land, which is now assessed at $6 million, and another $1 million to help prepare for its launch as Carpenter Nature Preserve. Jim and Nancy Carpenter have for years practiced this kind of conservation philanthropy. They hosted the IBJ Podcast outside of Wolf Run's old clubhouse amid a cacophony of songbirds for an interview to discuss why they took a chance on buying the golf course, how they'll stay involved with the preserve, and how they envision the property evolving. They also provide an update on how Wild Birds Unlimited fared during the pandemic, riding the sudden wave of interest in backyard recreation. Here's our conversation. I'd like to welcome to the podcast Jim and Nancy Carpenter. Thank you for inviting me to the preserve.
Thank you, Mason. We're glad to be here.
Before we really get into this, just for the benefit of the listeners, describe the preserve. How has this property changed in 5 years?
Well, this is a former golf course, Wolf Run Golf Course. Maybe people are familiar with it. It was a very difficult golf course, one of maybe the top 10 ranked difficult golf courses in the country. And it's a beautiful piece of property. It's 216 acres. It's just full of nature, hills, and 2/3 of a mile of Eagle Creek runs through it. Lots of different habitats. It's a treasure.
Jim, did you have something you want?
Yeah. So I just always say there's at least 30 ecosystems here. When you look at, the potential this has for being incredible nature preserve for wildlife, birds, insects, flowers, so forth. But it's also going to be an incredible place for people just to come and take a stroll and enjoy the nature and just get away from it for a few minutes.
As I remarked before the interview started, I was wondering if this is what my backyard would look like if I just stopped mowing.
It probably is, yes.
And I'm seeing a lot of what I'm assuming are natural grasses, seeing a lot of shortish, I guess, immature trees. The roads are kind of crumbly, what were roads, for a golf course. What kind of birds am I hearing?
Oh, my goodness. I think we know that we've listened to over like 50 species at one time. So this is incredible for a habitat. You'd have to be a pretty sharp birder, though, to pick that up. We didn't personally do it. We had a really, really good birder friend come out and figure out the species here. But it's just, there's woodland birds, grassland birds, there's some rare birds. It's just, it's fabulous.
Yeah, Nancy, you said when you showed up, you saw a bald eagle fly over.
Yeah,
and then
certainly.
we have resident red-tailed hawks that are here nesting somewhere. We don't know where it is. We have red-headed woodpeckers that are living here and kind of the old, where the dead ashes are from all the ashes dying. We have a neat grassland bird called a dickcissel. Have you ever heard of that?
I might have. If it's what's that? The game about birds. I know you guys know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
What is the game?
Migration? Is it migration?
No, it's not.
I know which one you mean.
Okay,
but they kind of say their own name when they make a call. Dick Sissel, and so that's a neat grassland bird. But we also found a bird that's kind of rare in Boone County. It's called the blue grosbeak, and they're nesting here. And that was a rarely known occurrence. So they found it, and they are setting up housekeeping here, which is pretty cool.
And you mentioned there were maybe 30 different ecosystems. Can you give me just a sense of like what those would be?
So you start down at the Eagle Creek. So you've got everything that lives in the water, and then everything on the banks, and then you've got everything in the floodplain. And then you go up the ravines. You've got the wooded ravines, and that could have salamanders in the drainage areas there. And all the different wild flowers that live inside of woods. You've got the woods with the big trees, ecosystems up in the trees for the birds and the bats and insects, which is very important because the oak trees and hickory trees are kind of that's where all the moths lay their eggs, and they make the little caterpillars, and that's what all the songbirds use to feed their babies. That's the bottleneck for songbirds is actually insects. So the chickadees that come to your bird feeder and eat sunflower seeds, well, they need about 1,000 little caterpillars per baby, and they have 6 babies they have to feed over 2 weeks. So they have a lot of caterpillars. So that's what those trees are doing is a place for the moths to lay their eggs and the caterpillars to hatch. So then you've got the grasslands, like I said, with the grassland birds like the dickcissel, the meadowlarks, which are actually declining. And so we love to have meadowlarks out here. We would love to see bobolinks. We haven't seen any, but this could be a good place for them to come back. And so, I could probably keep on listing, but gives you an idea of all the different ecosystems.
So yeah, it's a welcoming place for wildlife to be able to rest and have a home and reproduce. And as the suburbs are spreading this direction, we're losing places like this. So we're really happy to be able to provide this for the wildlife.
So what then is the vision? I don't know, 5-10 years, what will be here that isn't here right now?
Well, we have been working for 2.5 years with the town of Zionsville to actually turn this into a town park. And so actually then the process is getting closer and closer. The town council passed a resolution to put out some bonds to sell, and then they will buy the property from us, and then it will be a town park. But about 1.5 years ago, the town also funded a master planning session in which the entire master plan for this as a park was laid out. So they have a pretty neat roadmap of what to do. So their first thing they will do with the funds that are going to be available is to make it open for people, basically roads, parking lots, bathrooms, and trails. So that'll be the first stage. And the second stage will be maybe who knows how many years it would take to fundraise and get the money for a nature center that would then just be a spectacular place to come out and be the headquarters for a nature experience.
Other assets here would ultimately be, besides trails, of course, an outdoor classroom, possibly a little campground that scouts could come and use, tree houses, natural playgrounds for kids. An amphitheater. So there's just limitless possibilities, and it will all be passive recreation, no active recreation, no ball fields or anything like that, no lights.
So no giant water slides,
no
flumes.
No.
Okay.
No.
Explain to me how you were brought into this by the town of Zionsville. Did it start with a phone call?
In a way, I'll just make a short story long. How about that?
Great for a podcast.
So 20 years ago, Nancy was a volunteer with the Zionsville Park Department, and she went door to door trying to find land that people would sell or donate to the park. And she was very successful and found quite a few donors or sellers of land. So she was successful in that. And she had started a little foundation with the community foundation that was for green space, and it was called the Green Space Foundation. So she had a little bit of money left in that, and so she called the mayor of Zionsville, Emily Styron, and told her, "Hey, did you know we have?" I don't know, it was like $12,000.
Wasn't a huge amount.
You can do something with it.
But I want to make sure the parks or somebody could use it for the town for green space.
And Emily had been talking to Stan Burton, the previous owner, but the current owner at that time of the Wolf Run Golf Course. And her vision was that, boy, wouldn't it be great if this could be a town park? But the town couldn't come up with the funds and the time that was going to be needed to do it. But she didn't know when she invited us out to take a hike that we would get involved. She just thought, well, Nancy has a vision for parks and maybe she could help me figure this out. So after we hiked it with Emily and Stan, this was 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years now, we just looked at each other and said, this place has to be saved. And, we spent our entire adult life trying to save land, working with the Nature Conservancy. We're both trustees with the Indiana Nature Conservancy. And so we've recognized that this was a prime piece of land to be saved in this part of the state, because everything's pretty much going to be developed and there would never be another chance like this again. So we decided we would gamble and buy the property and kind of just hope things would work out with the town. So that was kind of the risky element.
So truly, it was a gamble. I mean, there's no guarantee.
No, there was no guarantee at all.
That you would spend $5 million to buy it from Stan. And then hopefully
exactly.
you would be able to sell it to the city or sell it to the town.
That's right.
But if that didn't happen, you would be okay.
But I don't know, Nancy. To us, it made so much sense that the town would come through.
Yeah, we were really optimistic that how could they, not take an opportunity like this for a piece of land on the northern border of Zionsville. They really need to connect Eagle Creek. It's a waterway. It protects our clean water resources, and we thought, sure, this is a no-brainer. But it turned out to be a little more difficult than we had originally thought. We kind of sweated it out for a couple of years, wondering if the council would allow for the bonds. And ultimately they did. It was a 6-1 vote by the council. And so we were thrilled, just thrilled.
So were you at the vote? Were you sitting there in the front row? Like, what's going to happen?
Sweating.
Close. Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, but yeah, the town came through but what really was neat was happening. We always said from the beginning, it'd be a bargain sale. We would donate part of the cost that we had paid, as a donation to the town when they bought it from us. But then Jared Logston, who is the park superintendent for Zionsville, he became kind of like I'd call it the quarterback in the center that kept everybody connected, the park board, the town council, us. And then he went out and applied for grants, which are called next level grants. So he was able to get a $3 million payback through the next level grant. So when they buy it from us, then the next level grant, which came from the federal government through the state DNR, that they will get paid back $3 million. So that was then
it worked out
that was just
great.
Incredible timing that those were available.
Yeah, they had to have a match. And so the bargain sale was the match.
So again, you bought it for $5 million and
$5.5.
$5.5 million.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you sold it to the town for how much?
Well, it was our donation was $1.5 million off of the appraise. So by the time they got around to kind of making a deal with us, it was up to $6 million.
Oh, the appraised value.
So the appraised value.
Yeah.
So they're going to buy it for about 4.5.
Okay, that's the contract,
right?
Okay, and then they will be able to do that pretty soon.
Because the bonds are $5.5 million. So then they'll spend part of that will go to buy it from us, and the rest will be for development.
Okay, so you bought it for 5.5.
Yeah,
you're gonna sell it for 4.5. So your $1 million is a contribution, essentially.
Right, exactly. But it's really $1.5 million because it was appraised at 6.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, one other thing, we did announce to the council that we're going to be placing $500,000 into the Zionsville Parks Foundation for the care of this property through the years. It's probably not big enough to be a true endowment, but certainly will help as projects come along for rehabilitating the property.
Well, and that's a whole other story. Emily, the mayor, made another big ask of Nancy. She asked Nancy, well, can you start a Zionsville Park Foundation? And so Nancy said yes. So you spent 2 years now.
Well, there wasn't anything else to do during the pandemic. So
it's not easy to start a foundation, get the board members, have all your board meetings, and then start just all the machinery.
Get the
but it's all in place.
501c3 status, and but we've got a great board.
She's got it all in place for donations to happen, and so it's really an incredible asset as well.
So when did you buy it?
February 2021.
Okay, so it's been more than 2 years.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, have you been involved in maintaining the property as such? Or what would that entail?
Oh, that's just been fun. I got to buy all my boy toys. I got a pickup, an ATV, a pull behind mower. So we just have fun mowing. We use the ATV to pull a mower behind it. Mostly keep the old cart paths open, so then it's easy to just take a stroll, or a hike, and so that's really what we do, is just keep it hikeable, because it would all be overgrown.
You're not preserving like the fairways.
We're not doing the fairways. No.
Well, we love to bring out people who are interested in the property, like the council and the Parks Board people, and any other potential donors, friends. Because we just love people to come out and fall in love with it.
Now, this is not your first large-scale contribution, obviously, to the naturescape of central Indiana. Tell me if I'm right. You previously donated a parcel of land at the Brown County Nature Conservancy?
Well, it was just some acreage down near Brown County State Park on southeast side of it, that we just donated to the Nature Conservancy, the Indiana Nature Conservancy. And they have a Brown County Hills project that just fit in nicely with.
How big a piece of land was that?
That was about 50 acres.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's one other project. You provided money to create the Wild Birds Unlimited Native Pollinator Meadow.
We did.
In a formal gravel pit at Newfields, between the canal and the 33-acre lake in the 100 acres.
Exactly.
I guess we specifically call it the Virginia Beach Fairbanks Art and Nature Park.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
And that was an exciting project. Nancy is on the board of trustees at the Newfields. And so we had learned that they had a really big vision for creating a pollinator meadow. And they did need funding for it. And so we jumped in and said, we'll help out. And we did. And so now it's called the Wild Birds Unlimited Native Pollinator Meadow. And that's our company. And we want to thank all of our customers throughout North America who have helped us be able to do that. And it's kind of fun. Just a week ago was our 40th anniversary of starting the franchise company in Broad Ripple, where you said, Mason, you went to high school.
That's correct. Broad
Ripple. So did Nancy. And actually, in a few days, it's our 40th wedding anniversary as well.
You have to tell me the story. If you could keep it short, that'd be great. Tell me the story of how you started that, the first one, the concept, because I have the sense that it's fairly dramatic.
Well, I don't know. I was an unemployed bird watcher.
There you go.
I'd gotten a master's degree up at Purdue, and I decided there weren't any jobs for professors, so I didn't want to go on and get a PhD and not really be able to get a job. But I was in the ag school, which led me to believe that you can use science for business, and but I did get a job running a little garden center for a couple of years, and then after I left that, I was an unemployed bird watcher, and I thought, well, they're really bird feeding is not treated as a true hobby. It's treated as something you put in between fertilizer and pesticide season at the hardware store, in the winter, basically. And we're going to put really crummy stuff because it's a handout. So why would anybody want to spend any money on quality stuff? But I decided that actually it is a hobby and that people deserve to have good advice and good equipment and good food. So that's when I started Wild Birds Unlimited in 1981. And it was in Broad Ripple, and that was back when you could still find something fairly inexpensive to rent. And I did, and I got a year's lease because because she was the landlady wasn't too confident that I could last longer, and that's all the money I had. So
like bird feed store.
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
Exactly. And then turned out a couple of years later, we actually started franchising. There were people that wanted to do what I was doing, so we said, "Okay, let's start the franchise."
That's such an interesting sort of pivot point, because a lot of people would think, "Hey, we're doing pretty well. Let's open more of these that we can own." But your thought was instead to franchise them.
It was because I didn't have any money. And back then it was still, the interest rates were like 20%. So, I couldn't borrow any money. So that franchising allows someone to own their own business. So in essence, you're using their assets to propagate your business further. And then you have a relationship where you're the franchisor, they're the franchisee, and we provide services that help them succeed in their own business. So that's really what I thought I was going to be able to do. And that's what we did.
This is horrible, but I just realized that what you're doing is you're literally seeding other people's businesses.
Absolutely.
You're helping.
Yes. We love love bird food puns.
You've established a root system, perhaps, and then you are helping other people create their own organism, if you will. Right. Somebody should shoot me before I keep going.
But anyway, so now we have about 365 stores all across
365
all across the U.S. and Canada.
Wow. Yeah. And all of those except the original one are franchises.
They're all franchises. I'm a franchisee of myself.
Oh, okay. I got it.
So the franchisor doesn't own any franchise, any stores.
Okay. Do the individual franchisees, do they technically own the store?
They own their business.
They own their business,
and then they have a basically an agreement that they can use all the trademarks, our business methodologies, our sources of products, sell our name brand products, all that type of stuff is what the license is. Mm.
And then you are CEO and founder of the business,
right?
Wild Birds Unlimited. Is there any other
Inc.
appellation there? Okay, Inc. Right, which exists to franchise the concept.
Right.
And then revenue comes to you in the form of sales royalties from your individual franchisees.
Yes.
In addition to some sort of fee that they pay at the beginning.
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ Podcast.
Taft, today's modern law firm. With more than 800 attorneys in 8 primary Midwest markets and the District of Columbia, we provide solutions to the business issues facing middle market and emerging companies alike. We do this through a highly collaborative and inclusive team approach. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, we're back with this week's edition of the IBJ Podcast and our interview with Jim and Nancy Carpenter of Wild Birds Unlimited. I saw on the website, so it typically costs between $200,000 and $350,000 for a franchisor to a franchisee to get one of these going.
Right.
And then you provide all the intellectual property that they need to do that, all the processes, because that seems to me to be the hard thing about starting a business is knowing the processes.
We actually have a staff of 55 people up at our Carmel office. And so we have everybody from coaches that help them learn to be retailers. We have an entire marketing and advertising team that creates all the ads and helps support marketing and advertising. We have 2 full-time, well, actually 1.5 now, naturalists who help them learn about the birds in their region and help them be really good advice givers to our customers. We have a whole IT section because basically, we've had to go from old desktop point of sales and cash registers, to now it's all cloud-based point of sale. We have people that help you figure out what the store looks like and where do you get the fixtures and all that kind of stuff. So it's got an entire team that helps people be a retailer so they can focus on, finding customers and then keeping the customers.
Do you think that there was just a massive unmet need 40 years ago for people who wanted, to be basically backyard birders, but there just wasn't, an outlet for that?
Well, initially it was really slow growth for us. We put did about 5 stores a year for about 6 years. And then it was really in the 90s when it took off. And I think that's when I'd say it was kind of like an unmet need, and even just knowledge that such a store existed happened because, people didn't know that you could have a bird feeding store. And so it was really the 90s is when it took off.
And interestingly, during the pandemic, it really did well because people were at home and they needed to feel in touch with nature and they needed something to do outside of their window. And it was a real connection and I think lifesaver for a lot of people to be able to feed the birds.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about. Is it seems like, as opposed to maybe something like a restaurant that you might be located next door to in a large, anchored shopping center, pandemic must have been more of a mixed bag for you guys because, as we were told over and over, people were really interested in the pandemic, if they could, to really invest in their outdoor areas. And how did you guys see that?
Well, fortunately, we were ready to go with an online ordering system. And each store actually has their own store, but it's all branded Wild Birds Unlimited. But it's a true omni-channel experience where their customers can go to their store and it's their regional bird food that we have different bird foods that are better in some parts of the country at their local price. So we had that already figured out. And all we had to do is add curbside as an option instead of delivery. And so that's how we were really able to we were ready for the pandemic. We didn't know it, but we were ready to switch and with a little bit of programming, enable our website to work for the customer. And so the customers all learned very quickly to go to the website, or they could call us and do that as well. But so that really enabled us to prosper, and meet the business and demand that we had.
I think, the last time that we'd done a significant story on Wild Birds Unlimited was 2013, and you were in the midst of kind of a refocusing of the store, maybe away from tchotchke-related outdoorsy stuff and really honing in on seed. Do I remember that correctly?
You're absolutely right. And so what we had found was that focusing on selling bird food is, as it seems kind of silly that we should have to say that, but what happens is the bird food changes through the years, but it can be kind of fun to get the gift items or the garden items with bird and butterflies and all that. And sometimes a store owner, franchisee would focus too much on that because it's kind of fun, and then they really wouldn't be as good of an advice giver of bird feeding. And so once we changed that around and we started really focusing on how do I work with each customer as an individual, because every yard is different. And they could be in an established suburb with big trees, or they could be a brand new one that was a cornfield a year ago. So when we work with each customer to help them figure out what are your birds going to be, how do we put the feeders on poles or whatever, and then if they've got raccoons, how do we keep them off of it? And so once we do that, and we focused even more on product innovation in our bird foods and the bird feeding feeders, that was really the way to go. We need to just focus on it. We still have a lot of gift and garden items, but we keep them in balance. And so that really did work out.
But you, by that time, had that online infrastructure already developed. You were ready to go. It's very easy to order, and you were specifically ordering from your local store.
So actually the people you go and see inside the store, they're the ones who pack the box, and it's their seed that they've gotten within the last week. It's all as fresh as could be.
Now, the problem I've tried to forget, but I will never forget with the pandemic was supply chain, getting the stuff that you need to your store, whatever. And I know that you guys were recognized by, it was a franchise industry organization for supply chain innovation. What did you guys do during the pandemic to make that work?
Well, there were store owners who actually couldn't go into their store. There were a couple that couldn't do curbside or anything, but because they had the online store, their customers could order from them on the online store. And we had a vendor who then was shipping from, it's kind of north central Ohio, was shipping anywhere they needed it shipped. And so we quickly went, and there were about maybe 50, 60 stores who absolutely had to have that. They couldn't go in. They, could be, there were some laws where they couldn't go in, or their staff, just didn't want to come in or work. And so that kept
the store itself was
totally closed.
Yeah.
So that kept them in business and was a really major impact for the franchisees that were enabled to do that.
Did you lose any operators like long term from the pandemic?
No, I think actually it did, made a few people just think about, is it time to retire and sell? So we did a lot of transfers. Actually, a couple of years ago was a big year of transfers, but that also could have been, we started what we called 1WBU, which was really catching up with all the visual presentation. Everybody had to have the same loyalty club and the same point of sale. And so it was just time to do it. And that was also when somebody would go, nah, I've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years. The next owner can do that. So we sold a lot of transfer, but
so
they're all happy.
Transfer, it's just transferring ownership.
From ownership from one to another.
Or do you have more stores now than you did before the pandemic?
Yeah, probably about maybe 25.
And I think when we talked to you in 2013, the rate of stores opening maybe about 10 a year or so.
We're still about that.
Is that about that still?
Yeah, brand new stores. We call them vanilla box stores. You go into a strip center and that's what you get. So yeah, maybe about 10 of those a year. And we're anywhere from about 20 to 30 transfers a year.
So the latest challenge is now, I don't even know what we call it anymore, inflation. And interest rates are going up. Does something like that, the increase in lending rates affect the number of people who would be able to open a store?
It can have some effect on that. There's a lot of people are finding creative ways to even use their 401ks to finance a store. So they're kind of self-financing in a way with that. There's the home equities that people can use too, which does have the current interest rate. So, but I wouldn't say that's a major factor for us, but maybe individually there are for some, and I just don't know, but it hasn't really been a problem.
How long are you guys going to keep at this?
We're having fun. And the greatest thing, and I always want to mention, is I have an incredible team and we call it the Franchise Support Center. And they are fabulous at taking care of business. And so we have really good expertise in franchising and all the legal and everything goes with that. And so I call out my chief development officer. His name's Paul Pickett, and he's in charge of that. And then my COO, her name is Amy Moore, and she's been with us almost 30 years now as well. So, we're just having fun, and I'm in no hurry. I'm just enjoying what we're doing.
I have to ask you guys, how old are you?
I'm 70.
And I'm 67.
I'm hoping I'm going to retire by 70, but you guys are good.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
Okay.
I think when you really, really love what you're doing, and it's our passion, and save the songbirds. That's our mission right now. And it's, Jim loves what he does. He's creative. He's visionary. He spends his days off out on the deck figuring out how to tweak bird feeders or foil raccoons. This is just his passion. So I can't imagine him ever being fully retired. I think he'll be like the Orville Redenbacher of bird feeding.
My thanks again to Jim and Nancy Carpenter. IBJ's Daniel Bradley has a story about the Nature Preserve Project on the front page of the latest issue of IBJ, which you can also find at IBJ.com. And here are a few other stories from the new issue I'd like to draw to your attention. Here's a question for you. Who do you think is responsible when a hospital sends a patient's diagnosis to the wrong person and that person immediately posts the diagnosis on Facebook? IBJ's John Russell has the details from a privacy case involving an Indianapolis resident that has made its way to the Indiana Supreme Court. Also in this week's issue, Peter Blanchard explains how the state is investing in Warsaw, Indiana, in order to help preserve its critical mass of orthopedic device firms. And IBJ's latest edition of the Corporate 100 ranks the largest public and private companies in the state. And again, you can find these features in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at IBJ.com. And I will say it is easier to access all of the latest local news about business and politics and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business, community, and economy if you are a subscriber. And you might not know that we have wrapped all of IBJ's content together with all of the stories, columns, and podcasts from our sister publication, Inside Indiana Business. And now works out to about $3 per week for actionable information about every notable business development across the state. You won't find Indiana's story told with this kind of breadth and depth anywhere else. Just go to IBJ.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ Podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.